my first visitor from the syndicated series VIP and Baywatch. Greetings to the beautiful Pamela Anderson. Pamela Anderson had 5 marriages. The duration of one wedding was 12 days. Another occurred during a magic show's 90-minute intermission. In 2006, there was a triple wedding that fell apart in a few of months, and she kept going back to the same spot throughout it all. Using $8 million of her own funds, she constructed a house in Malibu from nothing. She sold it in 2021 and permanently left California. The motivations extended much beyond real estate. A miscarriage she seldom talked about, accusations in court records, and a tape taken from a safe that permanently altered the internet. The beginning of Pamela Anderson's story already seemed unreal. On July 1, 1967, the day Canada celebrated its 100th birthday, she was born in Ladysmith. Because she was the first baby born in the country that day, people promptly gave her a title that sounded almost too perfect to be genuine. She was dubbed the Centenary Baby. Almost overnight, what should have been a private family moment became a national phenomenon. Cash awards, presents, baby supplies, and even a freezer full of meat were provided by nearby companies. However, there was a very normal family struggling to make ends meet behind that happy public narrative. Pamela was raised in a working-class household where comfort was hard to come by and money was always scarce. Barry Anderson, her father, endured the bitterly cold British Columbian winters while working as a furnace repairman. Carol, her mother, worked long hours as a server, taking on all jobs she could to support the family. Life was pragmatic rather than dazzling. There were no luxurious vacations, no limitless extras, and no simple path ahead. That strength was important, since Pamela discovered early on how dangerous the world might be. She was secretly assaulted by a trusted female babysitter between the ages of 6 and 10, while her parents were out at work. Threats were employed by the woman to keep her quiet while disguising the abuse as games. As a little child, Pamela was terrified and perplexed, and she carried that anxiety by herself. When her younger brother Jerry was born later, she did everything in her power to keep him safe. She felt it was her responsibility to protect him, so she allowed herself to continue being the target. The babysitter seemed to be caring and presented gifts so that no one could see what was actually going on. Pamela kept it a secret. Burying the hurt, she persuaded herself that no one would ever believe her. Her feeling of safety and trust was so severely distorted by the abuse that it affected her for years. She even wished for the woman's death at one point, and as if her wish had somehow mattered, Pamela was left with the weird, agonizing guilt of a child's magical thinking when the babysitter eventually perished in an automobile accident. Then things became much more gloomy. When she was 12, she was sent to a friend's older brother's house for what was meant to be a harmless backgammon lesson, only to be raped by him. Rather, he turned the entire situation into a violent one. Pamela didn't know how to defend herself since she was too young, too shocked, and too overwhelmed. She survived it in quiet, frozen. It didn't end there either. A lover she trusted set up an attack on her by 6 of his pals later in high school. That was nearly impossible to comprehend how terrible that was. The way they handled it like a joke, as if her fear and suffering were insignificant, only made it worse. She was then left bruised on the road after being flung from a moving vehicle. Deep wounds were left by those attacks. There was also little tranquility at home. By the time Pamela was 17, she had witnessed for years how her father's alcoholism caused stress, anxiety, and unexpected acts of violence in the home. It came to a breaking point one evening. Drunk and furious, Barry grabbed Carol and slapped her head against a hot stove burner. At last, Pamela lost her temper. She plunged herself into the situation and used all of her strength to punch him in the face. The violence ceased for a moment as blood spurted out. In a home that had long seemed precarious, she stood there, trembling but unwavering, protecting her mother. It wasn't a solution, but it was a turning point. The house had too much damage. Pamela then departed. She worked as a waitress to support herself while renting a modest flat in Comox. Survival was her top priority, not because she had some grand scheme. She later relocated to Vancouver, where she worked regular jobs to make ends meet. She was employed at a tanning shop. She was an aerobics instructor. She persevered and earned what she could. She was just a young woman attempting to escape chaos and create something on her own long before Hollywood ever recognized her as a fantasy. Then, in 1989, everything altered in a way that seems fictitious until you realize it actually happened. Wearing a tight lab t-shirt, 21-year-old Pamela attended a BC Lions football game at BC Place in Vancouver. It wasn't a deliberate action. She was simply another admirer in the throng. The entire stadium erupted when a cameraman discovered her during a game break and placed her on the enormous screen. Over 30,000 people began applauding, whistling, and paying attention to this unfamiliar blonde woman. When Labatt's executives in the stands witnessed the response, they knew right once that something strange had just occurred. They searched for her after the game. Pamela got into the entertainment industry in this manner. It happened at a random time in a football stadium when the audience decided they could not turn away. Not through an agency or any meticulous plan. Labatts were quick. They didn't simply assign her some promotional assignment and move on. After they signed her, she became known as the Blue Zone Girl, a national icon based on the company's branding, her body, and her face. She soon appeared on advertisements, billboards, and posters across Canada. It was Pamela's first paid contract and first direct encounter with celebrity. She had no intention of becoming a model. She was now seen peering down from walls in bars and roadside stops by those who had previously recognized her as the woman instructing fitness courses. Snorts. If a beer advertisement could make so much noise, larger industries were sure to take notice, and that attention opened the next door practically instantly. Playboy was one of them. Scouts contacted her after seeing her pictures from the Labatt campaign. It makes understandable that Pamela was hesitant at first. Beneath all the sudden attention, she was still a Canadian girl from a little town, and posing nude for a renowned magazine was hardly the kind of ideal she had grown up pursuing. Nevertheless, she eventually took a plane to Los Angeles to complete the shoot. When she appeared on the Playboy cover in late 1989 at the age of 22, everything changed. It virtually instantly propelled her from Canadian notoriety to worldwide renown. What came next was a relationship with the magazine that lasted for decades, not just one appearance. She would go on to appear on more Playboy covers than any other woman, making herself one of the most identifiable faces in the magazine and a prominent representation of the glamour and sexuality of the 1990s. She received even more attention and was drawn farther into Hollywood when she was chosen Playmate of the Month in February 1990. She took a chance on a life that had come to her, almost by accident when she left Canada and relocated to Los Angeles. She performed as Lisa, the Tool Time Girl, in one of her first acting roles on Home Improvement. The segment appeared little on paper. She mostly grinned, walked on screen, and gave the hosts tools. However, Pamela managed to make even brief screen time unforgettable. She gained experience in television thanks to the role. Additionally, because of her impact, the industry began to take notice. Pamela was already in the conversation when Baywatch came seeking for someone who could captivate the audience simply by showing up on television. At that point, she developed into something far more than a model or a supporting cast member. She became a global celebrity when she joined Baywatch in 1992 as C.J. Parker. She appeared in 77 episodes throughout the course of 5 seasons, from 1992 to 1997. For a show that most people only remember for its superficial picture, the character was written with unexpected depth. Although CJ was stylish and lively, she also had a complex family history, was emotional, impetuous, and loved animals. She addressed love, conflict, romance, rescues, and all the melodrama that made Baywatch so compelling in her plots. Audiences all throughout the world responded favorably to the role's warmth and charm because of Pamela's presence. Naturally, The red bikini came to be associated with that achievement. One of the most iconic images of the decade was Pamela rushing across the beach in that high-cut red one-piece once Baywatch gained popularity. The way the outfit was tailored emphasized the fashion that the event was promoting. Additionally, the picture became more than just a wardrobe because the series touched so many people worldwide. It turned become a symbol. It was copied, laughed about, parodied, imitated, and discussed as part of 1990s culture. The bikini turned become a shorthand for sex appeal, celebrity, and television dream all at once. However, because it influenced how the world viewed women's bodies at the time, it also carried the burden of unachievable expectations.